All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Shadows and Secrets Deep Dive series. I am Samantha Skal.
And I am Kerry Savage, and together we're Shadows and Secrets, a writing retreat for mystery and thriller authors.
Find out more on shadowsandsecretsretreats.com.
We are both book coaches and authors, and we love talking about story. This is our series of deep dives into scary books we love, where we talk about twists, structure, masterful misdirection, villains, and anything else that strikes our fancy about MTS, which is the overarching genre term for mystery, thriller, and suspense. But first, I'd like to introduce my co-founder of Shadows and Secrets, Sam.
Oh, thank you so much. So I am a writer and a book coach who loves working with thriller, mystery, and suspense authors to plan and write twisty novels. I especially dig brainstorming twists and villains, which is great fun, but sometimes gives me nightmares.
Thanks, Sam. So I'm Carrie. I'm a writer and book coach also, and I love working with writers to make their fictional ideas come to life. And I'm super into immersive settings and details that really pull you into a book's world. So before we get started, a quick reminder that we are going to be giving everything away, including key plot points here. So if you haven't read today's book, please hit pause, go read it, and then come back.
Which is a great time to show which book we are going to be reading, which is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. Just a fantastic thriller. I think technically also psychological suspense, but the way that it reads, I would argue it's a psychological thriller more than suspense. It's just nonstop action. All right. So seriously, there will be no secrets unturned. So consider this your final spoiler alert warning. The structure of these talks is going to be the same every time. We're going to read the book jacket copy and then what the author has done to manipulate us before we even start.
We're going to read the first page and what the author has done to manipulate us there.
And then we're going to break down each of the major twists in terms of how the author did it, what percentage of the way through it happened, and what on-screen clues existed so that the twist worked.
And we're also going to talk through how the author accomplished the overall misdirection and the manipulation of the reader, and the way the author used language or setting or other elements to set the reader up for maximum fear.
Excellent.
I love saying that
Um,
every time.
yeah, it's really fun. This is why we read scary shit. We like to be scared by fiction. We love breaking it down and figuring out how they actually did it, but mostly we're just big fans.
Yes, we are. All right, are we ready to go?
We sure are. So I already held it up, but again, Taylor Adams, The Last Word, fantastic. So I'm going to read you the book jacket copy now, so we can just learn how he went about doing this. So the big hook, which is an interesting thing, actually, not every book jacket copy starts with like the elevator pitch, like that kind of short, high level hook. This one does. So after posting a negative book review, a woman living in a remote location begins to wonder if the author is a little touchy or very, very dangerous. And this is editorialization, but it works here as well. In this pulse-pounding novel of psychological suspense and terror from the critically acclaimed author of No Exit and Hairpin Bridge. Both of those are great too, if you've not read them. So stopping with if the author is a little touchy or very, very dangerous, period. That's such a great elevator pitch, right? It's like remote location, negative book review. We know that someone's going to be coming after her and it's going to be the author. And that's exactly what happens. So here we get into the actual book jacket copy. Emma Carpenter is living in isolation with her golden retriever, Laika, house sitting in an old beachfront home on the rainy Washington coast. Her only human contact with is her enigmatic elderly neighbor, Deke, and via text with the house's owner, Jules. So she's alone. Creepy. One day, she reads a poorly written but gruesome horror novel by the author H.G. Cain and posts a one-star review that drags her into an online argument with none other than the author himself. Soon after, disturbing incidents start to occur at night. Seriously, worst nightmare. To Emma, this can't just be a coincidence. It was strange enough for this author to bicker with her online about a lousy review. Could he be stalking her, too? As Emma digs into Cain's life and work, she learns he has published 16 other novels, all similarly sadistic tales of stalking and murder. But who is he? How did he find out about her? And what else is he capable of? And then it goes on to some more editorialization about how awesome Taylor Adams is, which I agree with. So if we go into the first page, I'm not going to read the entire prologue, but the way that this is set up is, we don't have any like time hopping around, but we do have a very interesting structure with this book, in that the draft of this book that this author, who she wrote the negative review about, is we think is writing is listed throughout the entire novel itself. And there are a great many assumptions that the reader makes about who is actually writing this novel. And it turns out that those are incorrect. So spoiler alert, but it completely works, right? Because the way that we are led to believe this through Emma's experience. She has this interaction with this guy, and the first chapter is all about reading this book and then writing a negative review, and then this interaction that they have, which ends with the him asking her to take down the review and then says, "I won't ask again," which is very menacing, right?
Just a
And
little.
then and then we go into chapter 1 where she sees a stranger in her room as she's sleeping, and this is honestly one of my favorite first sentences for chapter that I've ever read. Sometime after 3 a.m., Emma awakens to see a man standing in the darkened corner of her bedroom. Like, come on, right?
Right.
Terrifying. So in this one, I'm just gonna read the first few paragraphs. It starts off with the end, which is a little confusing potentially, because we're like, wait, what's going on? Emma Carpenter drops her e-reader. Like surfacing from a deep dive with aching lungs, she has never been so grateful to see those 2 words on her paper white screen. Thank God, she rubs her eyes. She downloaded this bizarre ebook for 99 cents at her neighbor's recommendation. First clue that we just pass right over it, right? We think it's friendly. The novel's cover art was featureless, black and white with a Comic Sans title. And I don't know how you feel about Comic Sans, Carrie. I find it to be violating as a font.
Yeah. That's why it's
And
such a beautiful choice. I mean, I would love to meet a Comic Sans fan, but I've yet in my
please,
47 years
please
to find
dissuade
one.
me. Yeah. But yeah, Comic Sans just, I can't.
Perfect.
So this book is called Murder Mountain. Sinister, but in a lo-fi way, like a VHS snuff tape. Amazing, sort of atmospheric. For less than a cost of a candy bar, how can you go wrong? Post-purchase, she's noticed the subtitle, "The Scariest Book You'll Ever Read." Uh-oh. The raving blurb was in quotation marks to appear quoted from a review or notable person, but there was no attributed source. It was the author's personal boast. Assumptions, right? Like, and it's true, it ends up being accurate. And it also just sets the tone that we're dealing with someone like fairly unhinged,
Mhm.
that they would do this. And then, like I said, it goes on where she writes this review. There's some other creepy stuff that happens. A bird flies into the window. We learn that she had a similar omen with her disappeared, gone husband. And the assumption is that he's dead right up until the very end when we learn that he is not. But there's just like so much skillfully done manipulation in terms of it makes sense the way that Emma thinks about it, but it also is not entirely accurate, which does not make her unreliable. It just means
Right.
that she's thinking about this in a certain way because to her, that part of her life is done, right? She's on the run.
Yeah, she is running away, for sure. And I think, like, well, one of the first things I have to acknowledge that as a writer, I think maybe this is just extra fun for anyone who is a writer because
Yeah,
there are so many writerly stereotypes that are acknowledged and poked fun at. And so, like, the whole time, I'm just like, oh, I mean, that is so much fun. You
it's
will
so
enjoy,
much
you do
fun.
not have to be a writer to enjoy this book, but it does add an extra level of just delight at
Yeah,
all the things that are sort of poked fun at here and acknowledging the worst impulses that we all have, like, there's a reason that everyone tells you not to read the reviews of your books and to get into it over with anybody over their opinion is just like right away when she gets a response asking her to take it down.
oh,
Oh
just
God, stop.
yeah,
No, no, don't do it. um so yeah, we know right away that I'm gonna just go with he. I don't remember if we ever get pronouns in there, but of course my main bad guy immediately goes to a guy. Sorry.
yeah.
Um,
Apologies.
yeah. So we know that the book is going to be pivotal in all of this, obviously.
Yes.
And then we know that there's going to be some kind of back and forth duel. Like we don't know how that's going to unfold, but we know like that is going to be the focal point, right?
Yeah,
It is for probably, up until like what that 85% twist,
yeah,
probably.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and it is just really, really clever the way the interspersing Emma's POV with the book that's being written, and you're seeing, again, I think of like the deep dive that we did about the last Mrs. Parrish, and how POV is used so skillfully to manipulate. So we're seeing Emma's POV. Now we get the book first, right? We read the book's events, the book's narration of what's happening,
Yes.
and then we see Emma's POV of the same events, and there's enough overlap. It's not like it's completely disjointed. Like there's commonalities there that you think, oh, okay, yes, this is two people's different POVs of what the hell is going on, and they're just those key differences that when they're juxtaposed like that as readers, it's so much fun to pay attention and see like where are those discrepancies and how are we unraveling what's actually happening and who are we I mean, we're predisposed, of course, to trust Emma because
Of
she's not
course.
a psychopath in this situation. But it is really, really fun to see, and then you're rooting for her as well. So you're also cheering on
Yeah.
every time the killer says, this happened and I planned this. And then, she's there foiling the plans and making things happen that aren't supposed to happen. It just gives you like you're rooting for her in this really visceral way, I feel like.
Oh, so well said. So well said. So before I forget, I just want to label a couple trigger warnings here.
Oh, yes.
There's suicide, there's infant death. The dog does not die. You meet the dog in the book jacket copy. And so to let everyone relax, the dog does not die. The dog does experience some harm, but the dog does not die. So consider
Which I have
yourself.
to say, I am one of those people, like hurting the dog was tough for me. If he'd killed the dog, I would have been real mad. Real mad.
Totally. Well, there's a whole
From the book,
website for this.
probably.
Did you know about this website?
Oh, wait. Yes, maybe I do. That tells you if there's an
Yes.
animal in a book, whether it dies or not. Yes, I think I did.
We'll post it in the notes. I can't remember it right now, so I won't spend the time looking it up. But there's a website you can go to type in the title of the book, and it'll tell you whether or not the animal dies with no other spoilers. And so then you can relax,
That is good.
because
That is a deal breaker for me.
it's a deal breaker for a lot of people, and I totally get it. Yeah. Anyway, like it's fine.
Yes.
So, to your point about the way that Taylor Adams very skillfully push the narrative along with like this draft of this book, which he's calling Murder Beach. And we find out pretty early on that H.G. Cain, this author, and I think he does have he, him pronouns, um, announces to Emma that this is going to be what he's writing, which is around the same time that she starts to wonder whether or not these 16 novels he's written have been based on real life and whether or not he's like this crazy active serial killer who's done some truly awful things. Because every single book is written from the perspective, first person POV from the killer, which, when you start thinking about a series of books written that way, very uncomfortable, right? Because it lets you see the inner workings of the killer. Like you can imagine, Emma doesn't read the rest of them, but she's read one, and she keeps referring back to it because she's so creeped out by what she read in this book. And it's, she says it's horrible writing. She keeps telling him this. She doesn't take down the review. And so she shows a ton of agency, and also just she's this very interesting protagonist where she has nothing to lose. She's literally on this beach contemplating suicide. She has a backpack outside the back door that's filled with rocks. She goes down to the ocean. She's drawn to it. She's very depressed. But this also gives her a unique position to be in if she's going to be stalked and, threatened by someone. Is like, well, I have nothing to lose, right? Like either I'm going to do the thing in the ocean with the rocks, or I'm going to be murdered by this person. So sort of like that cornered animal, or someone who it's like the most dangerous, right? And that increases the tension because we're like, oh, Emma, like, what are you gonna get out to? And I think he did a very clever thing with the dog. Normally, if I was like book coaching someone, I'd be like, don't hurt the dog. It's just too risky. Like, you're gonna freak out the readers. Yeah, it's a bold move. But Leica gives Emma a reason to live. And so saving Leica gives her the strength and like the reasoning she needs to be able to move forward, because this is ultimately one of these big questions that we always have to ask ourselves about writing thrillers. It's like, why would these people do these things instead of just taking the easy way out, which is like not doing them?
Right.
And
And to your
so
point, like if she wants to die, why wouldn't she just kind of accept her fate,
exactly.
and instead of fighting back?
Yes.
Why does she want to keep going and go through all of this? Because it's
Yeah.
a horror show.
It's a horror show. It's a really rollicking ride from start to finish. This is one of these books where like I think I opened it. I got the book of the month version. Great program, by the way. If you're into thrillers, they always have one every month. Um, and I started reading it at like 10 or whatever, you know, it was like, oh, I'll do like an hour before I go to bed. Famous last words. I finished it in like I think 2.5 hours. Like I just ripped through it. It's that good. So 10 out of 10.
Yep. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I did the same thing. It was another one where, my husband woke up at 2:30 in the morning. I was like, why are you still awake? I'm like,
You're
because
like,
I
I
have
can't
to
put
know
it
what
down.
happens.
Yeah, it's incredible. Um, so yeah, I think there's some very clever things in here with the POV. But what I was saying about the narrative connection, what you were saying about that as well. We see what's happening through this Murder Beach draft, which is in a different font, so we know what it is, and it's through H.G. Cain's viewpoint, right? Like very clearly. And then it switches to what's actually going on. And because H.G. Cain has been set up as this person who's like self-inflated superhero, like owns everything, has control over the entire situation, the contrast with what's actually going on in like the story present is is like comedic horror, right?
Yes.
Because we're seeing like this POV from this book being like, and then I conquered, whatever. And I'll give you some examples in a second. And then we see Emma being like, and then I moved. And so I didn't
Right.
get stabbed or whatever.
Right. It's like, oh, and I thought about this, and I was going to, she was going to go here and do this, and then you see Emma being like, yeah, I just did this, like I went over here instead. To your point, like, he's setting himself up in this POV as like this great crazy mastermind, and yet when you
Yes,
see it unfolding in real time, it's not that he's not a threat. He very much is a
very
threat,
much as a
but
threat.
in a like sort of wacky, overconfident, ego-driven kind of way that just while you're scared for her, you're also rolling your eyes at this guy. Like, who do you think you are? Like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
So it there's like the tension that's there, but it's also very entertaining because he is such a hot mess.
Yes. Yeah. And it works well to both give the pacing a little break, right? Like
Mm,
this takes place over the course. I mean, I think it's like 3 nights.
I don't
It's
even know if it's that
it's
long.
very fast. Yeah, because
Yeah,
we have the
it's really
first the
well, the
first
very
chapter,
end adds some timeline to it, but I
right.
think the bulk of the action, minus the very final twist, is really maybe not even 24 hours.
Oh, you're
It's
right. Yeah, like once we actually start entering, because she sees the figure in her bedroom and she like she's so tired. She's just like, I don't want to deal with this kind of. And then she like sneaks over to turn on the light and there's nobody there. And so she sort of discounts it. But this is another thing that he does really, really well is each chapter has something progressively more creepy that she sort of dismisses until she can't. Which is a tried and true way of keeping your thriller and your suspense very, very high, or suspense high in your thriller. Because we never have a chapter where nothing happens. Each scene moves the story, right? And the other thing that's super interesting about what he did is that we know who the villain is, who we assume the villain is
I
from
was gonna say,
the book jacket copy, from page 1, right?
mhm,
We know
okay,
that H.G.
not a
Cain,
mystery.
not a mystery. And so the story question then becomes like, is she going to survive this?
Hmm.
I would say, which is, kind of a classic question. And that's why we pick it up. We're like, I mean, look at this cover, like super creepy, right? You don't read this when you're like alone at night, like in a dark house. You read this hopefully during the day, which I did not, and then had nightmares. Thank you. Um, yeah, but we know who this person is the whole time. And her neighbor, Deke, is also on the page from the very first page, right? It's his recommendation to read this book, which, as it turns out, is a key plot point for the entire thing and something she realizes much, much later in this climactic twist. Um, so yeah. What else do you want to talk about with this? Shall we go into like where the twists are or
Yeah, let's do that. There's a
okay.
couple, actually, before we do that, I will say just, in terms, because I love setting and language and things
Yeah,
like
let's talk about it.
there's just a little note like there, I think we've mentioned this on other deep dives as well, but like it's just another like kind of bonus thing that you can do. And certainly like, to your point that we've talked about many times, like this is a revision thing. You can absolutely go back and
Yeah.
look specifically for this, but certain descriptions, like I had written down, like he described the house like a tombstone or
Yes.
a bony click, like just those kinds of things. They're a little bit unexpected and also very atmospherically creepy. So it just adds to all of that. Like when you're going to describe something like this in this kind of atmosphere that you're trying to, like, those are the kinds of key details that just immerse your reader in it even further without them necessarily picking up on it. It's just really, really well done that way.
Completely agreed. I mean, that kind of stuff is so subtle. And you
Hmm.
want to, I mean, certainly it can be overdone, but in thrillers, like you have some latitude with that because readers of thrillers and suspense and mystery love this stuff. So we're happy to just be immersed in bony clicks, right?
Right, right. You don't want to make it like overly
Yeah.
purple kind of language, but
Yeah.
certainly like going in and sprinkling those kinds of descriptions. You want to do I mean, we need descriptions. We need to be able to visualize things. And if you can employ those in ways that helps set the creepy atmosphere, like that's you're golden.
Yeah. 100%. I'm trying to find exactly where this was. I was taking notes per chapter.
Um,
Oh, right. In chapter 3, she has this word. The serial killer was her second biggest problem. The biggest she sees every day, it's this backpack. And that's when we learn that it's filled with rocks she can't remember gathering. There's suspense that is built in, intention built in of, whether or not she's going to do this to herself. And then again, that's where the dog comes in and gives her a reason to live. And it wouldn't have worked without the dog, which is
no, I
just
don't think
like,
it would have. It wouldn't have at all. Because again, then what is her, why is she fighting back? If
yeah,
she is like at this in this desperate sort of emotional state and there's no dog to defend and protect, plus we also find out later like that being that protector, playing that protector role is where she feels like she's had her biggest failure.
yes,
So that without her, I think, really consciously realizing it is something that she feels like she's rectifying a mistake that she made, or she's proving to herself that she's not like this huge disappointment anymore.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
even though what actually happens, we're in well into spoiler section, right?
yeah.
They're in an accident. We feel like, and that's where the whole like two, I forget, is it 2/3 or 3/4? We find out, no, it's probably the 85%. We find
Mhm.
out that her husband is not dead. We've
Not
assumed
dead.
that there's been some sort of accident and her husband has died and she's run away. What we actually find out is that her husband hasn't died, but her daughter, that they have tried very, very hard to conceive, was in the back seat of the car when there was this sort of really what was actually described as a pretty minor accident. Both
Yeah,
she and her husband are fine. They walk away. But it was just a very freak moment, an accident of physics, I think is how they kind of
yeah.
phrase it.
It's like one in a
And the
million.
daughter dies.
Yeah,
So, um, so she feels like she's failed her daughter and she's failed her husband and she's failed herself. She did, it was her fault. She was the one who was driving. She was trying to not to look at her phone at the same time, and she looked away for a minute, and that sort of set off everything in motion. So all of that goes back to, yes, she needs the dog there. If there wasn't the dog and there wasn't that like that drive of her to sort of feel like she can prove herself that she is not this horrible person who has failed everybody, then she can, like, that is where she needs to, that's her goal, that's her misbelief, right?
yeah,
Her feeling like that she's not worthy anymore of
yeah.
she feels like she's become. She needs to find her way back to that. That was kind of a word salad. I apologize, but I think it got there in the end.
No, but it was very well described because interestingly, she has these aha moments kind of throughout. There's like aha moment number one is like, I'm not gonna let this guy kill my dog. He can have me. I don't care about me, but there's no way I'm letting my dog be hurt by this. And her neighbor, right? She cares about her neighbor, Deke,
Yes,
who turns out to be the ultimate crazy mastermind villain, by the way. Amazing setup.
indeed.
Um, but in the climactic scene, when she's fighting back, it's all just about like she wants to survive this because she wants to survive. She has that aha moment of like, I'm going to get through this and possibly there's a light at the end of the tunnel and maybe I'm going to go back to, maybe there's a chance where I can like face my past is what she says, which is another great like misdirection because we at that point still think her husband Sean is dead. And I just looked it up that when we find out Sean is actually alive, it's in like the final twist scene with Deke. Um,
Yes, that's right, because we don't know until we've actually, there was a series of twists right in there that
yes, yes, this is another
last one.
really interesting thing. Yeah, so let's back up a little bit and go to the midpoint twist is, let me see. I was taking, because this one was a little bit different and then it wasn't exactly at 50%. There's just like these series of reveals.
Yeah.
Um, and by the way, for our new readers, the way to think about a twist is the reveal of the villain's truth, right? We know who the villain is. We know it's H.G. Kane, but his truth is going to be different from Emma's assumptions. And in this case, Emma's assumptions are not as bad as what's actually going on, which, you know, sometimes it can be the opposite, where the person assumes the worst and then it ends up not being, or their assumptions about motivations are wrong or whatever. Her assumptions about him are that he's a serial killer. And that actually ends up turned out to be not true. He ends up being not quite as bad as that, although he did kill somebody when he was a teenager. He is a psychopath. But he's also just like a sad little man who just, he fell in love with her. He's been watching her for this whole time and he's been around, but there's like this series of events that don't quite stack up. And this is what leads her to understand the final twist that Deke is behind everything. And so the FedEx guy dying, like he shows up at around 43%. And this is all set up earlier because, you know, there's this man standing outside her front door on the camera. There's like motion detector lights and it's all very creepy. And her landlord, Jules, who also ends up being pivotally connected to everything, sends her a stun gun to protect her. And the stun gun gets delivered, right? So it doesn't come out of nowhere. The FedEx guy doesn't like pop out of nowhere. It's all set
Not a
up.
happy coincidence.
Not a happy coincidence. No, we avoid coincidences in thrillers whenever we possibly can, if not always. So he shows up at 43%, and then we have you know, 52% is that she thinks that this killer is over in Deke's house. And then the internet is all off. And all this happens kind of in this 50% mark. Is like, we can't go back, right? This guy is clearly like here to kill her. And do you recall exactly where the like murder beach thing happens? I feel like that was around 30% or something. It was pretty early.
Ah,
I'm just looking at my notes here to see. Anyway, it doesn't, I mean, yeah, I have it in part 2. That's what it was. It starts off in part 2 on page 87 of 337, which is, I'm not going to do that math in my head. I'll get it wrong. But around this time, we established that H.G. Kane is writing this book and she's going to be the person that he kills next.
yes.
And so then the tension escalates. We understand that she's going to have to fight for her life. And then we find out that she truly can't go back when she can't leave. She decides to leave. And so that's kind of a first aha moment. And then she can't, right? The car's been disabled, which we learn about through the Murder Beach POV. And it's all just delightful.
Yeah, the other thing that I noted too, at like realizing right around that 50%, it's not exact, right? And I didn't do the math, unfortunately, but it's there in terms of what you were just saying of series of reveals. That's when she realizes that all of these books are based on his personal experiences.
Yes.
She at that point thinks that he is in fact a serial killer and not just the author of this one book or whatever.
Yeah.
And then just a few pages later, she realizes that Deke knows the author.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
like, yes, he recommended the book. That didn't necessarily, like, okay, sure, there's a connection there. But then she finds out that Deke, in fact, knows him, like, personally. And he says, oh, this HGK, like, idolizes him. So Deke is
Yeah.
throwing like, hey, you know, like, I know him. Like, I was a role model for him, which is just, woof, especially when you know what's coming or when you find out.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's so good. And so I have a note here that the resolution of the climax happens at 83%, which is actually a little bit early. Typically that'll be more like 87, 88, but it's not the end of the book. And I think this is part of one of the very clever things that Taylor Adams did here is like, we look at the book and we see what's left and we're like, wait, we just resolved what we thought was actually going on. And so, you know, I'll sort of summarize this, but like there's a gun, she's being stalked through the house, Deke shows up, she stabs Deke because she thinks that he's the guy, and then she feels bad about that. And then Jules shows up. It turns out Jules is this guy's mom and doesn't actually call the cops. And so like all of this happens and you're just like ripping through the pages being like, what's
Mhm.
gonna happen? And then she ends up stabbing Howard and he dies, right? And she calls the cops and we still have like 15% of the book left. And so we're like, what's gonna happen? Um, and so she wakes up in the hospital, she's like ready to go face everything. And then there's this scene with Deke. And so did you see this coming? I've read this book now like 5 or 6 times, and so I've forgotten my initial reactions, but you just read this, right?
Yeah, I just read it for the first time, well, a couple months ago. No, so like I think this is what started in my notes, like the series of like and another and another and another, because we find out like I literally Deke is alive! Exclamation point. And at this point, we
Yeah.
really think that like he has been, her compatriot. He's like he's gone into the trenches with her. They've been teamed up to try to defeat Klein,
Yeah.
and so at this point when I read it, I'm like, oh, he's alive! Yay! That doesn't last very long.
No, totally. And there's also this hint that it's a pretty strong hint. It jumps off the page where Howard Klein, we'll call him Klein, says he told me I had to kill you. And that pops up about, I don't know, like in the beginning of the climax, like when they're actually facing off in the book. So between like 50% and the actual resolution of the climax, it's just nonstop. Like a
Really is.
series of things happen. She's being stalked. It's super scary. She does a series of clever things and it's interspersed with this murder beach POV, which is what makes it, I mean, it's the narrative drive. It's just like chef's kiss. It's amazing. Um, but he says he told me to kill you. We don't know who this is. We don't know what
Mm,
he's talking about. She kind of questions whether or not there's another person. Then, Klein pulls out this mask that he was wearing when he was creeping on her from the front door. She thinks it couldn't possibly have been Deke, which of course it wasn't then, but
mhm,
Deke is a big part of it. And so this is one of these things about master manipulation of the reader. Emma is looking at a villain clue, which is that he told me to kill you, and then logically like moving away from it because she has too much to face. She has to deal with this serial killer who's in front of her.
mhm.
And then this is what leads her to understand this Deke situation. And once we get to the Deke thing where she's like, oh, we're going to have tea together, it turns out she's figured out that he is the actual supervillain who wanted all this to happen. She understands it. But instead of it being like kind of a boring, like, oh, I'm confronting you and you're telling me the truth and like whatever, there's this moment at 98%, like perfect final twist, where he says, I already did. And he's already drugged her,
Yes.
right? And so she has to then find a way out. And you're just like, oh my God, like what?
Right?
What's going to happen? And so did you see that coming? Like when you were reading this?
No,
Yeah.
no, no. And maybe I mean, I am one of those people who for all my love of MTS, like I still get very caught up and I'm surprised by a lot of things that maybe I should have seen coming. I don't know. But in this case, no. I mean, that last, I don't know, 30 pages or so, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was literally, I feel like almost on every page, or certainly in every little chapter, like it was a twist that I did not see coming to the extent of like, it really kind of knocked my socks off. Like,
Yeah.
he poisoned her. And then, just to rush through to the beginning, like she carves a message on herself that says, Deke killed me, and shows it to him right before she goes into the ocean. Like,
Yeah.
damn. And then the very last thing is, he's calling the cops to say, like, oh, I'm really concerned about my neighbor. And then they go, oh, yeah, she just walked into the station. It's like,
Yes. It's
yes,
just like, it's so amazing.
it really is
Um,
so good.
And so like her aha moment, by the time she goes and confronts Deke, she's gonna go and she doesn't want him coming after her and Sean. And this is when Sean calls and we learn that he's alive, which
Right.
is like probably like, I don't know, 93%, something like that.
Yep.
That's like when the Deke scene starts. And then so we learn that he's alive. We don't know about the baby yet. That doesn't happen until the very, very end. I don't think. I could be wrong on that. Um,
Yeah,
but there's all these clues. So
yes.
like Deke and Emma play hangman. They live a quarter mile apart, and his first word was propofol, which is what he drugs her with in this final scene. So like bookending, right?
Yep.
And
The full
then
circle
this,
moment.
yeah, this backpack full of rocks is what he uses to try to kill her. And the biggest thing is that she confronts him with is like he's written Murder Beach because he wants his career back. And so he set up H.G. Klein, Howard Klein, to go and do all this stuff so that he could solve the murder and then write this next bestseller, which is he's also a writer, which is part of what you were saying about it's so fun. But the whole time we've thought it was Howard's POV. It's actually Deke's POV in Murder Beach because he's the one writing it in the style of Howard. Or like maybe a manuscript within a book or something. It's not really clear, but who cares? Like it works.
Right,
Um,
exactly. It doesn't really matter.
yeah, but then, this final aha moment that Emma has when she's underwater and we learn about Shelby, the baby, and she has this image that like Shelby didn't die and she gets to hold her and like say goodbye. And then she thinks like, not right now, like I'm not done yet. And then the final scene is her meeting Sean, right? And so we have like a full emotional arc for her. She's healed, or at least on the path to healing.
Path, I would say, but
Klein
yes.
is dead. Deke is going to be in jail. It doesn't really get resolved, but we know that he's a terrible person.
Yeah, we don't
Um,
see it, but we know if she's walking into the police station, you know that like that's your cue there. Like you as a
yeah,
reader can be satisfied that he is going to get what's coming to him.
yeah, yeah. Just a stellar book.
Really,
Well,
really just
well
yeah.
done, Taylor Adams. I am a super fan of yours, and I will read
Absolutely.
every book that you put out. Did we miss anything with this? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, the one last thing that again, I'll just go back to like little writerly things
Yeah.
that I just loved and had a great laugh over is there was a great Chekhov's gun sort of thing that
Yes.
wove
Oh my
its way
God.
through.
Yes. Yes. The
So
revolver.
early in the book when she and Howard are going back and forth and having their confrontations and all of that is building up, she puts a pan of water on the stove and turns it on to boil. She's gonna like throw this water and scald him, right? So and right there I was like, oh well, there's Chekhov's gun because you zoomed the camera in to show us this
Yeah.
pan of water, so we know something is going to happen with it, right? Later on I say, great tip of the cap to that because she goes back, I think it's her, goes
Yes.
back into the kitchen and the water has boiled off. So there is no water to throw on him anymore. So as a reader, when I'm going through and my writer reader hat kind of thing, I'm like, oh, that's actually really kind of fun way to poke at the Chekhov's gun thing.
Yeah.
Then just a few pages later, she uses the pan to smash him in the face. So it
Which
wasn't,
is,
it was like a fake out, and then it actually comes to like be resolved. And I was like, that was just fun. Thank you for that, Taylor Adams. I really
no,
enjoyed that.
seriously. That was so good. It was so good. I
Really
had exactly the same thought. Completely agree. Um, yeah. And there's also an actual gun in the first time she looks over at Deke too. And he has this old revolver and he claims there's no bullets, but then he shows up with bullets. And this is one of the things that leads her to understand that he's behind everything. And so
yep.
there's just like these little tiny villain clues throughout that she doesn't see correctly the first time. She misinterprets them. And that leads the reader to understand that it's going to be this outcome. And so when the truth is revealed, it's twisty because it's unexpected, but also makes sense once we look back at all the clues. So, mm,
Yep. Once
yeah,
again,
yeah, delightful. Do you want to do the reminder about don't compare?
well, yes, I can do the reminder. So just a gentle reminder from both me and Sam that please do not compare your work in progress to this or any published novel. Those published novels have been through many, many revisions. They've had, agents and editors' eyes on them. So there's a lot of refinement and a lot of work that has gone into them. So yes, you can get there, but it's not as easy as picking up the book on the shelf and flipping through it. Might make you feel like, oh, well, why isn't mine that good? Well, these are masters of their craft and they've also just
Masters.
put in a ton of work. So
Yeah,
that's our
yeah. I
caveat.
mean, this book is so tightly plotted and I assume went through several revisions to get it to be that way. Yeah. And obviously he's incredibly talented, but he also put in a
Yeah,
lot of hard work. Yeah.
absolutely.
So as you can see, we love thrillers and nerding out about story structure. If this resonates with you, please join our newsletter to learn about our retreat, Shadows and Secrets, writing retreats, other free events like this one, and anything else that we are going to put out in the next year. So Shadows and Secrets is happening in Salem, Massachusetts, September 25th to 29th, 2024. Applications open April 1st. And you can find us on shadowsandsecretsretreats.com. we hope to see you around, and we just love doing this. So thank you so much for joining us today.
We'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.